Hello out there in Autism land, and welcome to Autistic Radio. We're making a recording today with Jessica Aviles. Jessica works with a PBS charity, Positive Behavioural Support. Positive Behavioural Support is not directly ABA. It is informed by the science of behaviourism, however. But here in the UK, PBS and ABA tend to be quite distinct, with some overlap. The reason we know her is that she is the clinical lead of an organisation which we here at Autistic Radio were fortunate to have an experience with in a co-production. So, having had that introduction, Jessica, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Normally I ask people, what is the thing you want to get across? And they say a book, or they say a program, or they say an idea that they're having. There's something different about what you're trying to do. You're trying to generally make yourself accessible to us and start a conversation with us. Is that closer to the mark?
Yes, definitely. We've had the opportunity to work together on a co-production project, which has been very insightful and very thought-provoking. So I think it's just a continuation of those thoughts and reflections, really.
So in some ways, there's a little bit of trust that's built up, which we're not going to blow right now, yeah?
That's the aim, Jules.
Okay. Everybody can feel relaxed, you know? Background-wise, how did you get into the position where you are now? And what led you there?
Well, I fell into the field of ABA at the time. It was ABA, pure ABA. I'm originally from California and started working for an organization that was supporting, it was early intervention. It was working with really young children under the age of 5 or 7. And I just got to play a lot. I got to play with these kids. And it was something that I really enjoyed. I'm a big kid at heart. So it was something that felt quite natural to play and to learn through play. And I just, because it felt so natural, and I was at that point in my life where I wanted a career in psychology, but didn't really know what. I was exploring different things. That just seemed like the natural thing for me to do. So I ended up going and studying in the United States. My degree is in counseling as opposed to PBS or ABA. It's more, I would say, well-rounded, but still rooted in behaviorism, and had the opportunity of just working with a lot of people, young people, typically autistic children and adolescents. When I graduated, I really just wanted to have a better work-life balance. So moved to the United Kingdom. I know some people laugh at me, this idea of work-life balance being achieved in a city like London. But when you come from a place like the United States, there is a lot of differences. I was sponsored and I got an opportunity to continue to work and consult with families through a special school here in the UK. That was a bit of a culture shock for me, given the differences of behaviorism in the UK versus the US. And 15 years later, here I am. I've definitely changed, essentially. My practice has evolved over time, etc.
I'm going to jump on something you've just said there and try and explore it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's the difference that you pointed out between your training and your experience in the United States and what you found over here. Not your own personal work-life balance, but what's happening in autism here in the UK that's different from your previous experience.
I've been out of the US for a while now. At the time when I was in the US, the work I was doing was widely accepted as this is how you support autistic children and young people in schools, at home, in the community. When I came to the UK, it was still a bit like that, but I was working at a special school. We lived in a bit of a bubble. And the more I started to look up and look out, that's when I started to see the real difference. The real difference being the values and the focus being on the person-centered approach to supporting people as opposed to behavior modification, getting autistic people or children to sort of fit in this square that they shouldn't have to fit in. That I would say is a big difference. I think the field has changed in both. Definitely alive and thriving, this focus of values and this focus of supporting autistic people to live happy lives and in whatever makes them happy, as opposed to what society is deeming as this is what makes you happy.
Let's concentrate just on that concept of the difference in values that you perceive developing here in the UK to the difference in values over in the US.
Mm-hmm.
When you say values, what values?
What I mean is what's important to the individual, not what's important for the people supporting the individual. You can very easily get stuck in this idea that this is what's going to make someone happy. Whereas if you just sit and understand the person a bit more to understand what will make them happy is something very different. Does that make sense, Jules? I'm wondering if that's a good explanation for that.
Oh, please remember that I'm not here to put words in your mouth, Jessica.
Yeah, I know.
You have your thoughts, your opinions, and
Yeah.
you need to feel confident that they can be expressed here without permission from me or anybody else here.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. Yeah. How did those values make me think differently? I have always sort of seen the importance of knowing who the person is, understanding who the person is and why they do what they do and what needs are not being met. And how can I, as a professional, support them in getting those needs met? And I think it's very simple, but often people can get quite distracted by what other people think that person needs, or because they are non-vocal, that they can't express what they want and what they need. But if you sit with someone long enough and you observe what they're doing and you listen to them in other ways that are beyond just words, you can truly understand what someone needs and how you can support or adjust the environment around them to be able to get their needs met in a way that they haven't been met before. And I think that is what I mean by values.
Let me try something.
Yeah.
Let me try a statement and see if you agree with it.
Sure.
You see the values that are developing in your profession here differ because you see it as person-centered here in a more valuable way, and you see that there has been influence that has come from the autistic community that has informed what is being done here. Do those statements make sense to you?
The statements do make sense. I do think it's the person-centeredness that is well, obviously, to me as a practitioner, obviously that's what this is all about. For me as a practitioner, it isn't just because the autistic community has said this. It's because that's how I see the world as a human being. But it's also listening to the autistic community and saying, well, yes, again, obviously we need to listen to you to understand you, what you think support is and what support you think is needed. Yeah.
That feels very clear and very honest, you saying that, because what you've done is you've given a qualification to the two different concepts. What you've just expressed is to say that as far as you're concerned, you do actually feel that it's part of you to see it this way, that person-centeredness is obvious. And then you've gone, when I've tried to encourage you to think that maybe some of this has come from the autistic community itself, you've retracted a little on that, and you've said, well, that hasn't actually been the main thing for you. It's been you that's been the main thing for you, because this is the way you think. And thank you for that honesty. I think you're right. I think however a practitioner comes across in the same way that you do, looking for that person-centeredness, it's unlikely that much has been taken from the nebulous concept of autistic community out there, that it has come from us. So is what you're doing with us part of a movement to kind of alter that balance slightly?
it's a good question. Is it about altering that movement? I think it's about recognizing there are more similarities than we think. And I think in terms of how we see things, I think that it's being a behavior analyst, I've been lumped, and then I'm just speaking for myself as a behavior analyst and practitioner in the field for some time. I've been lumped into this, your approach is this way, you are like this. And very often I think, but that's not me. But if you got to know me and you've got to know what I've done and the impact I've had with the clients that I've had over the years that I've worked with, I don't know that you would still say the same thing about me as a practitioner. So I guess it's about finding that there is space for the autistic community to have their truth from their experience, from their lived experience. And it's also possible for practitioners to have their truth from their lived experience, and that they're not always mutually exclusive or on the opposite ends of the spectrum of what is right and what is wrong.
What I'm hearing is you feeling that you haven't been represented fairly as part of your profession. And if people knew what you actually did and what your real thoughts were, rather than caricatures out there on social media, people would feel differently about you, as your clients probably feel differently about you, and the people who work with you feel differently about you. There's this sense of you saying, it's not fair. People don't give me a chance. They think beforehand, I'm going to be this. Is that basically it?
Kind of. Yes, it is. But also, I don't feel that it's unfair. I actually just feel it is what it is. I understand why people feel very strongly about the field as a whole historically, because historically there have been norms of the practice that are not norms today for many practitioners. And I could say that hand on heart for every practitioner that works in my organization, that we have a culture that aligns with hearing the individual's voice, being person-centered, identifying what does quality of life mean for them, and helping them to achieve the tools necessary to see that as a reality, not just a dream and a hope. Yeah.
Well, however, out here in autism land, there are people who are going to hear you saying that, and it's almost like you would say that, wouldn't you? Where is the mechanism to make a change? Where's the route to change what you see as an incorrect perception?
I think having conversations like this, for one, being able to work together on projects like we've done, the co-production project has given us an opportunity to look at the detail and understand what's missing. I think that there is, as a field, the UK-SBA being one of the directors on the board, the focus for the field, for guiding the field, is aligned with that. Those are some mechanisms in which, from as a company and then as a sort of organization that has a registry of these practitioners in the UK, are ways in which it can start, it has already started, I feel anyway, to change that, to challenge that.
If it's okay there, Jessica, I want to bring in a texter here, and it's somebody with a poor experience. They say that their experience is that their experience of service is that the person paying for services should decide outcomes that are being worked towards. And I think, knowing the person who's texting, the implication there is that professionals are, in his experience, deciding these outcomes, and he is actually the person footing the bill for the professionals who get involved in his life.
Well, I feel like I honestly can't speak to that specific situation, given services is one word to describe many different people that could support an individual. And each organization, each service will do things differently. I could speak to how we do it at PSG, where we will receive a referral to support an individual. And we always identify, are we the right service for this individual before, once, yes, in fact, we can support this individual. We are the right service. We sit and understand what is needed with the individual, with their families and their carers, and look at setting goals. What are the goals you want to achieve? And so in PSG, all goals are co-produced and targeted, or are because the individual, it's what's important to them. We also have a duty as a service to then make sure that the goals are written in a way that we're supporting something based off of the referral. So if we get a referral because an individual has shown up in hospital due to suicidal ideation or a suicide attempt, our goal isn't just to get them on the local football team if that's what they want to do. It's also to think about, what are the things that are going to keep you safe? What's going to help you to no longer feel that that the only way to escape this pain or the feelings that you're feeling is by ending it all? How can we support you? What skills can we give you? And yes, it will be enriching your life by getting on that football team or finding other extracurriculars, but it'll also be things like coping strategies. What are the coping strategies you need to either refine or to develop, so when the going gets hard, you can manage, you can work through, there are more options than harming yourself. So it's striking a balance for us. We will obviously not impose any targets on any individual, but we will also make sure that we're having those discussions about, what else do you need? I know for myself, sometimes when I'm in the thick of a crisis, I don't know what I need. And sometimes I need someone whom I trust and have good, solid rapport with to just listen to me, to almost feed back and guide me to what I'm trying to say or what I might need.
Robbie continues in the text to say that when social care paid for support for him, it was social care, an outside body, part of our local authority here, that chose the outcomes that he was working towards, and not himself.
I don't think that's great. I don't agree with that at all. I think choosing outcomes, it's never going to work in the field.
But I also want to point that when you're speaking, you're saying that you are always asking the individual. You're always asking the individual, But then you're also saying to the individual, when the individual can't make choices for themselves, that this might be helpful if we lead you in this direction. So everything that I'm seeing as directed by the autistic person comes from an individual that's in a very tricky situation in the first place, and the power balance is enormous. So at the back of this, it makes me feel if the primary way is to relate to an individual is to hear from them directly, that seems appropriate. But it also seems appropriate that individual has some other backing from an autistic standpoint, where maybe a group of the people around them can give them a bit of a background so that they can then communicate with you. It feels to me as though the practitioner themselves is in such a position as to decide everything for the person, even if that's not what they intend.
Sure. I hear that, Jules. And I would say that setting those targets and coming up with goals in a time of crisis for an individual, that's one aspect of how we set goals. We will speak to other people in that individual's life that are closest to them, that know them, that are their advocates, their parents, their carers, their support workers, their actual advocates, if they have advocates, their key workers. And it's a joint up approach. I completely agree with you that it's important to recognize a power dynamic. We address that power dynamic by being very honest and open with the individual to say, you are the expert of your behavior and what you're going through. You are the expert of your life, and we are here to help you, but you are the expert of your experience. And I think there's something very powerful in being able to tell someone that and actually be forthcoming with that. It helps to take this idea that because you're the professional, you're the expert. I may know a few things, and I may know how to help you in ways that you may not know yet how to help yourself. But you only know you and your lived experience, and the people around you will know you and your lived experience to a lesser degree than you know, but still a higher degree than me as a professional. And I think that's really important to say and to be very honest about as we're building rapport with our clients in those very early stages of goal setting and getting to know one another.
Okay.
As for Robbie's point,
if you wish, yeah,
I think it's poor practice. If I'm speaking bluntly, that never should have happened. Because the reality is, for any positive changes to happen and to actually be maintained and sustained beyond social care support, beyond PSG support, there needs to be collaboration and co-production and a motivation and buy-in from the start. If someone's going to tell me these are going to be your outcomes, these are going to be your goals, I'm going to say, I think you should go somewhere with it, because I'm not going to do that. And it's never going to last. If I'm starting on that footing, I'm never going to make the changes that they think I should make. So I think it's absolutely terrible that that's happened to you, Robbie. And I think if anyone knows anything about how do you get people to change behavior and make positive changes in their lives, the only way they're going to do it is if they're actually bought into the idea that this is going to work for me. And it's never going to work if someone's telling you this is the only way it's going to work.
I think there is a problem in what you've described, though. You've described a situation where somebody needs support, they're in crisis, and you're offering that. And you say, from your own point of view, there are times when you need somebody to step in your own life to say, hey, you need this advice. And that's expected and understood. We're human beings. But in the power imbalance situation where you've got this client that you're asking this client to be the expert on their own autism, and then you also have knowledge of autism, they are so unequal in this situation. And they don't have any influence from another autistic standpoint, the autistic standpoint of the wider autistic experience from other autistic people. They are isolated with you, and they have to be the advocate for the whole of the autistic experience in front of you, and they can't do that. That's not possible for people. But everything in what you say puts them into that situation where they have to self-advocate for themselves against a happy professional that's on their game whilst they're in crisis. I feel as though there has to be something that supports that individual that has an autistic sensibility about it by some means. And how do we produce that if you think it's desirable?
So what I'm hearing you say is that they don't have anyone else who has an understanding of their autism that isn't a professional. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's one scenario, but it's not about black and white. It's about a general feeling that the majority of what they're hearing is coming from an autism professional who has a sense and a program and a way of dealing with things. And they're going to get caught up in that because they're vulnerable enough to not be able to express themselves in the best way possible. And the people around them advocating may not be in tune with the autistic sensibility. They may be neurotypical themselves, or they may be school teachers, or a second parent, or another person who is... The people you're in are in crisis, and they are vulnerable, standing naked in front of you with their brains exposed for you to play with.
Oh, wow. That's pretty extreme. I guess I don't really see it that way, Jules, if I'm totally honest. I think, yes, people can come to us in crisis. That is definitely something that is sort of why PSG sort of exists to start, is to help people when they're in crisis. I think there's something, I don't know, something doesn't sit quite right with that description for me there, Jules. And I think what doesn't sit right, it feels almost like the description almost insinuates that they're to be molded by the professional. Tell me if that's not what you meant. Because
I think there is an insinuation there, and it was intended to be provocative. Sometimes if I'm provocative, it gives you the option to counter it.
Yeah, because
do you get the image though? It's an image.
No, I get the image, and it doesn't sit right with me, Jules.
It feels very real to me.
Well, in it, I'm like, oh, in my brain, I'm a bit like, oh, that sounds awful and vulnerable. And I think, yes, I think what you're saying highlights a level of vulnerability that every professional should take seriously and be absolutely aware of. The level of vulnerability an individual in crisis has when they show up or when they come in contact with your service as a professional. And I think that's where it's really important to take a trauma-informed approach and a person-centered approach to supporting individuals in crisis, because you're recognizing that vulnerability, you're recognizing the power dynamic, you're recognizing that whatever and however you support this individual can go one of two ways. It can help to rewire historic trauma that's happened by the lack of support or person-centered support for an individual, or it can add to that trauma. And I think what you're saying, yes, very provocatively, is important to recognize. And I think part of me feels not uncomfortable, but what am I trying to say? I think for me, it is about recognizing the vulnerability and the importance of staying person-centered and staying rooted in the values of supporting the individual so that they can have a positive experience, not just they don't come into services to have like, oh, positive experience with me as a practitioner. Yes, I want them to have a positive experience with me as a practitioner, but I want them to have a better quality of life than how they were when they were referred to our service.
Thank you for accepting that rather provocative scenario that I presented to you. There's a lot for us to talk about, and we're not going to fix anything in a conversation right here, Jessica.
No.
Have you enjoyed the experience of talking and texting with the group today?
I have. I enjoy challenge. I'm not sure if I rose to it in the way that anyone's expected, but I do really enjoy the opportunity to have these discussions. And I think it ties back to your question previously, which was, how do we make those shifts? And I think sitting in this discomfort, I'm feeling discomfort right now. Sitting in this space, I think, and having these discussions is so important to be able to come to a space where we can coexist and welcome all experiences without having to demonize one or the other.
Yeah, I look forward to an ongoing conversation with you, Jessica, over the years. I'm going to leave the last comment to Ray here. He says, "Welcome to the autistic experience. All my points are generally covered here, but I'm sure that Ray has other things to think about and will ask you about next time we speak again, Jessica. Is that something you're willing to do for us?"
I am more than willing to do that, and thank you for welcoming me, Ray. Much appreciated. Thank you for having me.
Autistic Radio is here to open up conversations in a safe space for both professionals and autistic people themselves. If you have something to add to this conversation, feel free. news@autisticradio.com. You'll find lots of different conversations on our website covering a wide range of subjects, some of which are uncomfortable. Cheers for now.
We speak. Our words. We listen.
We speak. Our words. We listen.
We speak. Our words. We listen.
We speak. Our words. We listen.